A few years ago, the scenic Yankee Marina on the Royal River in Yarmouth was filling with silt, and the harbor needed dredging. The marina turned to Senator Susan Collins for help.
She was the one that went to bat for us, and without her, it wouldn't have happened.
Marina and Boatyard President Deborah Yelp says the project, costing $4 million, was carried out by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers after a nudge from Collins.
She's collaborative. She does reach across the aisle. She does care about Maine people, and she's willing to talk with everybody. And that's what we all need right now.
That's the kind of constituent service that underscores Collins' bid for re-election. She argues her 24 years of Washington experience and seniority in the Senate pays dividends for Maine.
That's the kind of assistance that I provide to Mainers all the time. And it's something that my knowledge of how to get things done, my relationships with agencies at the federal level allow me to solve problems, and I love doing that.
Collins continually talks about her big assist to small businesses during the coronavirus recession, the federally backed Paycheck Protection Program. She calls herself the chief architect of the $650 billion in loans that became forgivable when employers spent most of the funds received on employees.
3 out of 4 small businesses got forgivable loans. Under that program, it brought $2.3 billion into our state. So I was just on the phone with a group of my colleagues about how we could get another round passed.
At times, the Collins campaign itinerary seems like a PPP victory lap, visiting recipients, an aluminum partition maker in Brunswick, a grocery store in Auburn, a gear manufacturer in South Portland.
I know this state like the back of my hand. I don't have to learn for the first time the problems that are facing our fishermen in Lubec or our loggers in Jackman. They're my friends. They're people I've talked to over the years and have assisted over the years. And that's what I think makes a real difference.
Collins, who grew up in Caribou and has lived in Bangor for the past 26 years, says her roots are deeper than those of House Speaker Sara Gideon, who's from Rhode Island and has lived in Freeport for 15 years.
It doesn't matter where she's from, but what does matter is that I have a depth of knowledge that she simply lacks.
So if you are going to talk about seniority and 24 years, let's actually use it to help us here in Maine. I don't see that happening.
Gideon, a state representative for 8 years and the House Speaker for 4, is a doctor's daughter whose top priority is expanding health care access. In Augusta, along with Governor Janet Mills, Gideon helped lead efforts to enshrine the protections of the Affordable Care Act into law, such as no insurers denying coverage based on pre-existing conditions. She helped expand the state's version of Medicaid, MaineCare, which now covers 60,000 low-income residents, and to expand access to legal abortion. In a symbolic nod toward bipartisanship, Gideon made Democrats and Republicans sit together in the House chamber. She says Collins' reputation for bipartisanship has been undermined by backing the president, though Collins won't say whether she supports his re-election.
Senator Collins has a record just like I have a record. And her record over the past 4 years reflects someone who is voting with Donald Trump 94% of the time.
That rating includes voting to confirm 181 Trump-appointed conservative judges to the federal bench, most notably Supreme Court Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, and opposing Trump's removal from office in the impeachment trial.
She has not stood up to this president when it matters most.
Gideon rejects the criticism that she and the other Democratic leaders did nothing after adjourning the state legislature in March due to the coronavirus and largely ceding management of the pandemic to the governor.
There is an attempt from the Collins campaign and Senator Collins to deflect on what is not happening or happening in Washington, D.C.
Gideon increasingly wants voters to see the race through a national lens, she as an ally of Joe Biden, and tying the result here to ending the slim Republican control of the Senate.
And so whether we're thinking about health care, whether we're thinking about the cost of pharmaceuticals, whether we're thinking about people in substance use recovery, this is what matters. If Mitch McConnell is majority leader, then we don't see progress on these issues, and a vote for Susan Collins is a vote for Mitch McConnell.
Thank you.
A vote for a fifth, six-year term.
Hi, everyone.
Or for new representation in Washington. In Portland, Phil Hirschkorn, WMTW News 8.
Maine's U.S. Senate race will be one of the most watched and one of the most expensive in the country.
Gideon told me that to stop Collins from winning a fifth, six-year term, that she'll be running on her own record in the state legislature as someone who delivers as a Maine Democratic leader. This is Sara Gideon's second term as Maine House Speaker, her seventh year in office, representing Freeport.
Access to health care and affordability for health care are the #1 issue.
Gideon points to the legislature last year enshrining popular Obamacare provisions into Maine law.
So that no insurance company will ever be able to deny us coverage here in Maine because of a pre-existing condition.
Gideon says Susan Collins was wrong to vote to repeal the individual mandate that everyone be insured while supporting President Trump's corporate tax cuts.
There are 91 companies like Amazon, like Apple, like Delta, who are paying $0 in taxes after that tax law. It was nearly a $2 trillion tax break that went to those companies and the wealthiest families and individuals in America. And unfortunately, very few of those people are us here in Maine.
Gideon also critiques Collins' consistent support for Trump judicial nominees, most notably Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court.
Since Kavanaugh took the court, 26 abortion bans have passed.
Receiving the endorsement of Planned Parenthood, Gideon talked about being the daughter of a nurse and a doctor from India whose mother died in childbirth.
Our fundamental belief was that health care overall, but also access to family planning and reproductive health care, that it would be something that we never, ever had to question would be ours in this country.
Gideon adds that voting Collins out is a vote against Kentucky's Mitch McConnell as Senate Majority Leader. The Republicans have only a 3-seat majority. In an interview before she went to the Senate floor, Susan Collins told me she voted to acquit President Trump because House managers did not present a compelling case, the president was not accused of any criminal act, and it's an election year.
In the end, I had to weigh the evidence and whether or not it reached the very high bar that was established in the Constitution, and I concluded that it did not.
I asked Senator Collins which was a tougher call, the Trump impeachment trial verdict or her 2018 vote to confirm Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court.
I think removing a president from office is a more consequential vote. So I guess that's how I would answer that question, because it's overturning an election and preventing the president from appearing on the ballot this fall.
This fall, seeking a fifth term, Collins may face Democrat Sara Gideon, the State House Speaker, turning in her primary ballot petition today with signatures from all 16 Maine counties.
I think Susan Collins is on the wrong side of history.
Gideon says she believes President Trump did abuse his power.
Were I in the U.S. Senate, I would be voting to remove the president from office based on the evidence that we have seen.
Another Democrat running for the Senate seat, Betsy Sweet, says Collins has repeatedly protected Trump and his agenda, from his 2017 tax scam to appointing Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. Her approach to Trump's impeachment trial was no different. Collins didn't vote for Trump in 2016, but she won't yet say if she'll support him in November.
You know, I'm not going to discuss presidential politics at a time like this, but I respect the fact that the voters chose him to be president. And now they're going to have another chance this year to decide what to do at the ballot box.
Senator Collins says today's decision was a vote of conscience for her, and she did what she felt was right, just as she did when she voted to acquit President Bill Clinton in his impeachment trial in 1999. Live in the studio, Phil Hirschkorn, WMTW News 8. Republicans are blaming Democratic House Speaker Sara Gideon, who happens to be running for the U.S. Senate seat held by Republican Susan Collins, for not calling them back to work.
We need to be here behind us, working for the Maine people. It is time for the legislature to get back to work, to deal with the coronavirus-related issues.
Outside the State House, 5 House Republicans said they want to debate and vote on coronavirus spending and plans, including for 180,000 public school kids this fall. But Gideon told me in an interview 2 days ago, even though all 186 legislators aren't working under one roof, they're busy.
Legislators across the state, Democrats and Republicans, have been hard at work connecting our constituents to the resources they need, whether it's about housing or unemployment assistance or getting nutritious meals delivered to families who need them.
Committees are meeting, partly in person, mostly over Zoom, with commissioners for Governor Mills briefing legislators on issues from the budget to public safety. Speaker Gideon says the plan is to call the legislature back in August after total revenue from the fiscal year that ends June 30th is tabulated, but she's looking for another venue because social distancing inside the State House chambers is not possible. In Augusta, Phil Hirschkorn, WMTW News 8. Taking off her mask only to speak with reporters from 6 feet away, Senator Susan Collins distanced herself from President Trump's threat to defund schools that don't reopen this fall.
I am completely opposed to any withholding of federal funding to schools that, for what may be very good reasons, choose not to reopen.
Collins visiting the elementary school in Hollis to be briefed by school officials and see their preparations firsthand for students coming back, remote learning, and a hybrid.
The decision on whether or not to reopen schools has to be made by a state-by-state, even a district-by-district decision.
Collins said federal coronavirus aid to Maine so far includes $44 million to help K-12 schools with cleaning, construction, transportation, and personnel. Besides schools, Collins was also asked about the federal boost to unemployment benefits that expires at the end of July. She said she opposes extending that extra $600 a week because it's meant some people are making more money not working than working.
What employers are telling me is that some of their employees are better off and make more money receiving unemployment compensation than returning to work.
Legislation to extend the $600 boost for 6 months has passed the House. The Senate will consider that after the July 4th recess. In Hollis, Phil Hirschkorn, WMTW News 8. Allison and Steve, it's quiet here at what was Betsy Sweet's election results watch party. The party's over. Sweet spoke to reporters about an hour ago, conceded the race to Sara Gideon, and pretty much everybody left. Sweet and the Maine Democratic Party, of course, congratulating Gideon. Gideon herself didn't have a party. She was home in Freeport tonight, keeping her distance, but she did address supporters in Maine and across the country on Facebook Live, and we spoke to her a few moments ago. Earlier today, she was out campaigning with a mask on, visiting polling places from Presque Isle to Portland and greeting supporters. She's really carried herself like a general election candidate all along, anointed by the National Party, raising an astounding $24 million already, and making the case to deny Susan Collins a 5th term in Washington. Here's what Gideon told me remotely from her home in Freeport a few minutes ago.
We're in the middle of coronavirus. We have yet to see a second round of CARES Act funding, proper personal protective equipment, the right amount of testing. And this is something that is a failure of the current Senate and the Republican senators who are enabling this president in a total abdication of leadership.
So Gideon projected to carry at least 50% of the vote tonight. As you mentioned, she's already got 69 or 70% of the vote. That's just with a third of the precincts reporting, but it means she will avoid a ranked choice second round. The results are known tonight. Riding with lobstermen in Bremen to hear their challenges worsened by coronavirus restaurant closures and discussing access to health care with veterans in Augusta, State House Speaker Sara Gideon argued the Senate, run by Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, is an obstacle to progress.
Over and over again, and under my leadership, we've had to pick up the pieces where Washington and Senator Collins have failed us. That includes putting the Affordable Care Act into jeopardy. Here in Maine, we made sure that we protected people with pre-existing conditions and kids who need to stay on their parents' insurance until they're 26.
Democratic primary voters told us they like Gideon's qualifications and electability.
I like her values. I like what she stands for. I just feel like Sara has the best chance of beating Susan Collins in the fall.
Visiting businesses in Gorham today, Collins said her seniority after 24 years in the Senate pays dividends for Mainers.
I deserve to be reelected because there is no one who has worked harder for the people of Maine, all the people of Maine, and delivered more to them than I have.
Today, $4 million crowd-funded dollars for Collins' eventual opponent transferred to Gideon's campaign. Money raised in 2018 as Collins considered and then voted to confirm Trump Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh.
A Supreme Court justice who has already proved to be anti-healthcare, anti-choice, and pro-corporate.
Today, Gideon challenged Collins to debate her 5 times starting next month. Collins' reply, that's not nearly enough. She said they should debate 16 times, once in each of Maine's counties. In Augusta, Phil Hirschkorn, WMTW News 8. The 60-second spot is paid for by the Lincoln Project, a group led by disaffected Republicans who want to see President Donald Trump and the people they call his enablers lose this election.
Maine deserves a leader, not a Trump stooge.
Rick Wilson is a Lincoln Project founder.
You know, if we want to litigate over whether or not her vote for Brett Kavanaugh was a big lift for Donald Trump, or whether her vote to exonerate him when he was quite obviously guilty in the Ukraine matter was a lift for Donald Trump, those are the things that really matter.
The ad's most critical claim is this:
Susan Collins never stands up to Donald Trump.
But that's not true. Team Collins points out she opposed his repeal of Obamacare. She's voted to override every Trump veto, and she voted against his nominations to head the Education Department and Environmental Protection Agency. The ad asserts the president and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, quote, control, unquote, her votes, and shows she's voted with the president's position 2/3 of the time. That's true, but the rating is also the lowest of all 53 incumbent Republican senators.
People that have made this possible for him to act without accountability and without responsibility and without possibility of sanction are going to have to face the same kind of consequences politically.
Collins defended her record in a Q&A with me last month.
I don't cast my vote or make my decisions based on whether or not it's supported by any president. I do it based on whether it's right for the people of Maine.
The anti-Collins ad is one of the first produced by the Lincoln Project in a Senate race, spending $1 million to buy airtime on TV stations like ours. In Portland, Phil Hirschkorn, WMTW News 8. Republican incumbent Susan Collins and Democratic challenger Sara Gideon agree that Congress should pass a bill giving the Postal Service $25 billion in emergency funds.
I'm glad to have her endorsement of my bill.
Visiting the post office and local businesses in South Berwick this afternoon, Collins called her legislation essential.
Otherwise, the Postal Service has warned that they could be unable to meet their payroll in the first quarter of next year, and that would be devastating.
This morning in Augusta, Gideon heard from business owners who depend on the mail and veterans who rely on it for prescriptions. She said she's very disturbed by U.S. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy's Senate committee testimony today.
We're sticking with where we're at right now.
That he won't replace mail sorting machines dismantled, like the 2 at the Scarborough processing facility. Gideon says that makes postal workers' jobs harder.
When you are undermined from above, having sorting machines across the entire country and here in our state removed, that presents problems that could be insurmountable.
Collins also responded to DeJoy's testimony.
I don't agree with that. Scarborough is down 2 sorting machines, and I think that's a problem.
But the candidates disagree on a 2006 law Collins co-sponsored that requires the Postal Service to pre-fund retiree health benefits 75 years into the future. On paper, that costs several $billions a year.
There's no question that that law is a root cause of where we are today. The Postal Service went deep into the red because of that pre-funding mandate.
To blame the Postal Service's financial woes on a 14-year-old law where no payments have been made in nearly a decade is a fiction.
Today, the American Postal Workers Union wrote Collins to say her bill would set the Postal Service on a firm footing. But the union local has endorsed Gideon in the race. Live in South Berwick, Phil Hirschkorn, WMTW News 8.
In Maine's U.S. Senate race, both Sara Gideon and Susan Collins, as well as the groups backing them, are spending millions of dollars on TV ads, many attacking each other's records.
Tonight, WMTW News 8's Phil Hirschkorn investigates ads attacking Gideon over a past real estate investment, by her husband.
A quarter-mile from I-295 in Freeport lies Concord Brook, a two-street real estate development of townhomes with current estimated values above $350,000. There are 7 duplexes on Harvest Ridge Road and 4 triplexes on a cul-de-sac named Gideon's Way. Gideon, as in Democratic U.S. Senate candidate Sara Gideon. Gideon's husband, Ben, and his business partner formed Concord Brook as a limited liability company, or LLC, in 2005. By 2011, the residential development was built and off their hands, but it had run into financial trouble.
My husband was involved in a business that was around creating housing. That was in 2008 when the housing market crashed.
The crash altered the destiny of Concord Brook. Blueprints and planning documents we reviewed in the Town Archive show the development began when Ben Gideon and his business partner in the construction industry borrowed $4 million from Maine Bank and Trust, later absorbed by People's United Bank. LLC organizing documents filed with the Maine Secretary of State list Gideon as a project manager and the Gideon's former home address as the LLC's address. The plans called for constructing 35 units that expanded to 43, but only 26 got built. All but 2 units were sold by 2009. Concord Brook LLC was late paying some real estate taxes. From 2008 through 2011, the town of Freeport imposed a total of 77 liens, adding up to $57,000, according to town records and the Cumberland County Registry of Deeds. A list of liens was published in Freeport's annual report, even while Sara Gideon served as a town councilor. Gideon's campaign says Ben and his partner had exited the project in 2008 before the liens and ceded control to the bank. A letter provided to WMTW by their attorney then says, at the times the liens were filed, neither Concord Brook LLC nor its members were in control of the project. From June 3, 2008 onward, all interests and assets in the project and the right to control the project had been transferred to the bank.
Over the course of time, my husband and his business partner did resolve everything, made everybody whole.
In February 2011, the bank paid $622,000 for the last 2 unsold units and 5 acres of undeveloped land. The bank also paid off all the tax liens. We've discovered that 68 of the 77 liens apply to the 17 homes that were never built on 2 intended streets that do not exist. We're reviewing this project because the re-election campaign of Republican Susan Collins and a political action committee supporting her are airing attack ads over what they call a Gideon family business.
On the Freeport Town Council, Sara Gideon voted every year to increase property taxes. But at the same time, Sara Gideon's family business wasn't paying theirs.
The Gideon campaign says the liens were not the Gideons' personal responsibility because they started in October 2008, 4 months after Ben Gideon and his partners ceded control of the project.
Those were paid off many, many years ago. Susan Collins is well aware of that, as well as the fact that it was not a family business.
The Collins campaign dug up a record of Concord Brook's defunct first website and shared it with us. It lists Sara Gideon as the administrative contact. The Collins campaign says Sara Gideon helped market Concord Brook. Here's what Gideon said when I asked her about that.
I did a couple of hours of marketing on that project, yes.
On her official Senate candidacy disclosure form filed on August 13th, Gideon for the first time disclosed Ben still owes between $50,000 and $100,000 to People's United Bank for the Concord Brook settlement, the lingering financial toll of an old real estate investment. In Freeport, Phil Hirschkorn, WMTW News 8.
When you're looking for the best partner to work with in the United States Senate, you look no further than Susan Collins in Maine.
South Carolina Senator Tim Scott campaigned with Collins. He wrote legislation she supported creating opportunity zones, tax incentives to spur development in lower-income cities like Waterville, which led to $7 million to improve roads and the Riverwalk here. One stop, a Portland pizza pie company franchise. It received a loan through the Paycheck Protection Program Collins co-created after the coronavirus hit. Owner Pat Mulligan told me the $130,000 helped him keep his doors open and staff of 30 employed.
Nice to meet you.
Collins' calling card is her seniority in Washington. She said that enabled her to direct $25 million in transportation funds to replace a bridge connecting Waterville and Winslow. Later, she was asked why she thinks President Trump trails Joe Biden in Maine polls.
I think perhaps his style is not what Maine people are used to in their leaders. It's certainly very different from my own. That does not, however, take away from some of the economic accomplishments that the president has had.
One of those accomplishments, as Collins sees it, is the 2017 Trump tax cut she voted for. She says it brought relief to 90% of Maine taxpayers. Her Democratic opponent, Sara Gideon, says the tax cut benefited mostly wealthy people in other states and corporations who saw their tax rate go down from 35 to 21%. Gideon also said today that vote put the Affordable Care Act in jeopardy.
We see people losing their health care along with their paycheck, and we see this president and national Republicans push forward to remove health care from millions more.
The Trump tax law repealed Obamacare's mandate that everyone buy insurance, and Collins says she opposed that piece of it because it fined people who can't afford insurance. The issue is at the heart of a Supreme Court case to be argued after Election Day. Live in Waterville, Phil Hirschkorn, WMTW News 8.
The Supreme Court confirmation hearing for Judge Amy Coney Barrett started today. As WMTW News 8's Phil Hirschkorn reports, this will actually cast a spotlight on Senator Susan Collins and her record for supporting Trump nominees.
Today, Senator Collins said she applies the same standards to nominees no matter who's president.
I have supported the same percentage of judges nominated by President Trump as I did for President Obama.
Including Obama's two Supreme Court nominees, Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan. Collins called attacks by Democrats and her opponent, Sara Gideon, on her confirming 181 of 191 Trump nominees misleading.
What she doesn't tell you about those 181 judges is that Angus King supported more than 100 of them.
But King's confirmation rate for Trump nominees, 52%. Collins, 95%. Gideon takes particular issue with 5 appeals court judges she considers hostile to reproductive rights and the Affordable Care Act, including Judge Leonard Gratz from Nebraska.
He was confirmed even though the American Bar Association had said that he was unqualified to become a judge. They also noted some of his comments that he had made. For example, he said that Roe versus Wade was a morally bankrupt decision.
I talked with him personally. I met with both of Nebraska's senators, and they explained that the ABA system in their state for this particular nominee had not been a fair one.
Collins says she has not yet met Judge Barrett, but would be willing to do so, though she objects to the Senate rushing through the nomination and will vote no if forced to do so before Election Day. In Pittsfield, Phil Hirschkorn, WMTW News 8. Susan Collins is back on her campaign bus, telling supporters in Kittery after 24 years in office, she's reliable to steer federal funds to Maine, like $321 million for the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard through a Senate Defense Appropriations Subcommittee.
A subcommittee, by the way, that I'm in line to chair.
Retired business owner Chris Magnuson supports her.
She's a dedicated person. She has Maine's best interests at heart. I really feel that.
Collins rejects the argument by Democratic opponent Sara Gideon that a vote for her is a vote to keep Mitch McConnell as Senate Majority Leader.
I have a proven record of supporting my party when I think that they are correct, such as on lowering taxes for 90% of Maine taxpayers, and opposing my party when I think that they're wrong.
Whenever she's asked her feelings about President Trump, Collins likes to say she works with Republicans and Democrats and presidents of either party. Today, she also said President Obama called her on his last day in office to thank her for working with him.
I've been ranked the most bipartisan member of the Senate for 7 years in a row.
Collins keeps touting her launch of the coronavirus Paycheck Protection Program.
Thank you for the PPP.
I'm so glad that
Amen.
Congdon's Donuts in Wells received $350,000 in forgivable loans. Down the road, the Maine diner got $285,000. Jim and Karen McNeil say that saved their business.
We're struggling to make it before that money came. And the money came, and we survived and we thrived.
Collins says she wants 6 more years to solve problems.
As my husband watches all of these lying ads on television, he says to me, "Why are we doing this?" And I always answer the same way: for Maine and for America.
In Wells, Phil Hirschkorn, WMTW News 8.